Could that just put him over the edge?
I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tie. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
We'll be
Every
He
time
didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't
Fine.
get fired. He never got his contract renewed.
Welcome, everyone, to Two Guys in Hockey Talk. I'm Pawel the Cat, and I've got my co-host coming right in. We've been having some technical difficulties tonight. I don't know what's been going on, but clearly StreamYard is not agreeing with us. But thank you so much for tuning in, guys. We have a big jam-packed show. We have a great guest coming up in just a second. Kim Becker is here to talk all things hockey and Colorado Avalanche. We're hoping we get her in just a sec. And we're hoping to get everything in. Things have been going well. Things are going good here on this link, and we are rocking. How is everyone doing tonight? I hope you're doing well, enjoying the Stanley Cup Finals. Things have been going well. It's been busy. It's been chaotic. We are watching the Florida Panthers take on the Edmonton Oilers. And the Edmonton Oilers are down now in the series 2-0. So it's just been not the best. But I'm hoping that we can get things figured out and that we can get back to our regular league program, because clearly we are not doing well tonight. This is what happens with technology. You think it makes your life better, but it does not. Is it just me doing the show tonight? I guess it is. So, can you guys let us know what you think of the series so far? Do you like what Florida's been doing? Do you not like what Florida's been doing? Some of the questionable hits that we've seen. It's been an interesting ride so far, and I think that we're in for a doozy of a game 3. So we should have a wild one. Now, your prediction for tomorrow's game, you guys can let me know, because there's definitely going to be some interest. Oh, hold on. Evan's calling me. I'll be right back, guys. All right. I am back. Thank you. We had some difficulties, and we are now here live. There's a little bit of a hiccup. We still have people somehow tuning into our background, so I appreciate it because that's always important. I apologize. This is what happens when you get technical difficulties with the program. So I don't know what happened. I really don't, Evan. That's why I was so confused because I was trying to send the other link. But Pawel is saying Edmonton wins in overtime. Not going to be an easy one. And that Bob is on a different level, 100%. He's been playing unreal in this series. Now, we have Ken coming in here. We're going to be interviewing her. She's a great reporter for the Colorado Avalanche team. And she's done some great work for that organization.
Awesome. All right, our guest headliner of the night, guys.
Guest headliner of the night. All right, Ken, forget the last 5 minutes. Pretend this is a brand new thing. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on, and we appreciate it. And we want to ask you, and I know you've already answered, but you're going to do such a great job the second time.
I was off the air, guys. We had a whole show off the air. We're back on.
We're talking all things hockey. Where did your love of the game first emerge? Is there a moment in time or in your history of life where you fell in love with the game of hockey?
Well, a couple little like full circle moments in my entire lifetime, because I grew up here in Denver, Colorado, and I was a figure skater at the University of Denver. I trained there and at South Suburban. So I was in an ice rink all the time, before school, after school, weekends, 52 weeks a year. I was always around it. We had hockey players in our show. I was always around hockey. So I think my love of the ice probably transferred over to my love of hockey as well. But really, it was just my love of sports that got me back home, thankfully. So I skated with Dizzy on Ice for 10 years right after high school. My last year, I was the live host of the show. So I was on a microphone. I was on my skates, skating around, interacting with the audience. And I realized that I really, really loved to do that. And I wanted to be able to continue to do that in my next career once I quit skating. So once I quit Dizzy on Ice, I went to school for broadcast journalism, kind of fell into the sports broadcasting. I grew up in a family, 2 brothers. We watched football all the time. My dad is a former player. We always had football on. So really, like, football is like my sport. That's like my bread and butter. But being around the ice so much, I was always a lover of hockey. And my brothers love hockey so much. They both played too, of course. So it was just one of those things where it's just kind of always been in my blood. And then I ended up getting a job in Tucson at the University of Arizona as their football team reporter. And then I got a job back in Denver because I'd been sending out feelers, back home. Like, if there's ever anything available, I'd love to be back in Denver covering my hometown teams. And so luckily Altitude, which is the network that covers the Colorado Avalanche, they offered me a position filling in to host on their sports betting show. So with that, I really learned, like, I was very fluent in baseball, in NBA, and hockey, and football, college football. I had to be because we were talking like 30 to 35 bets a show. And I was doing like 4 shows a week on all 4 of the major sports, and then also college football. So I really was just thorough in Colorado sports, and luckily, kind of a blessing in disguise, that show ended up getting canceled, didn't get picked back up. So I sent my stuff to the Broncos, and the Broncos had an opening for me to host their red zone features during the game. So then I was doing Jumbotron stuff for the Broncos. Then that ended, and Altitude called me back, and they said, will you come host our pregame show for the Colorado Avalanche? We're extending it half an hour. So that's how I started doing that. And so for the last 5 months or so, I was really just like diving deep into Colorado Avalanche stuff, and there for the games, and covering it from the studio when they were away, and just really into the NHL. So it's been a wild ride, but it's been fun.
So before we get to Evan's question, so we did show this photo a little bit earlier. You were a figure skater, very impressive, because you have to have a lot of balance and patience. And what I hear is that some NHL players in the offseason even practice with figure skating teachers and coaches in order to get better. My question is, out of all these sports that you and your family are involved with, where does your love officially lie? Is it football, American football? Is it college football? Is it hockey, which we honestly know that's the answer? Or is it figure skating? Or is it something completely different?
I'm not going to lie to you. It depends on what season it is. Because when I am in a sport, I am in it. So like the last 5 months, it was all NHL. I was like hockey 24/7. I loved it. I loved being around the ice. I loved having the shows at Ball Arena. So I could smell the gear, and I could smell the ice and like feel it in the air. And I just loved being in the ice rink so much. And there's nostalgia there for me, of course, as well, just because I grew up in the ice rink. And But just being around the skaters and, you know, talking to hockey players, like their lingo is actually very similar to like what we would talk about as crazy figure skaters on Disney on Ice. So it really does depend. Right now, I'd say, I mean, I'm hosting for the Colorado Rockies right now, so I'm kind of into baseball at the moment, but I'm really excited for football to start back up. And I'm watching the Stanley Cup Finals, but it's hard to watch when I figured that the Avs would be in it, you know? So it's like a little one of those, and it's hard for me to watch the NBA Finals as well after the Nuggets got beat. So it's just one of those things where I've got it on in the background. I'm not watching it as diligently as I probably, you know, would have if the Avs and Nuggets made it a little further. But I also host a radio show with Chris Dempsey, Altitude Sports Radio, every Thursday, and we talk about all sports. So tomorrow morning I'll be on that, so I got to be paying attention. So my love is, I would say, like, football is what I know the best, right? I'm very thorough in football, very fluent in it, professional football, pretty good at college as well. But my love for hockey, it comes from that, like, that being in the ice rink within me and understanding the philosophies and the strategies and the mentality of an ice skater.
Okay.
So we get a lot of people. So on our show, we like to talk all things hockey. We talk with all different types of guests across the board. It's kind of our niche that we try to get into. And so we do have people always that like to comment in on different stuff. And usually NHL is always one of them. And so right now they're talking about how Bobrovsky right now just at a whole different level. This is not a fake Pawel. This is a Pawel that is a genuine super fan. So Pawel, thanks for coming in. So maybe you could be my next co-host. Maybe you could co-host with Pawel the cat.
You wouldn't have to change the name.
Yeah, exactly. So, but thanks, Bud, for joining in. A great point. So why don't we go to this question? So there has been a lot of talk right now around the Oilers in Canada, Canada's team versus the U.S., and of course, Vancouver fans, what we're seeing on social media, if you count social media as account, social media, all the Vancouver fans saying you cannot cheer. Calgary fans, you cannot cheer. Even Toronto fans, you can't cheer for the Edmonton Oilers. So they're all cheering for the Florida Panthers, it sounds like. Even Hyman said when they said, so Toronto's all cheering for him. He goes, Ontario's all cheering for him. He's like, I don't think Toronto is. My question is, I know a lot of Oiler fans were conflicted when they lost to Colorado, but they were excited that Colorado won the Stanley Cup. And then last year, when they lost to the eventual champions, the Vegas Golden Knights, they kind of wanted them to win in the playoffs, even though they were angry. What are fans of the Avalanche? Do they actually want Edmonton to win because they lost out in the West Side and they got beat by a team and then Edmonton beat them? Or do they actually want a team in the West to win? Like, what's the fans? What's the feel?
This is an interesting conversation. I actually put this poll on my Twitter a few days ago because it's one of those things where you're like, not specifically to these teams, but the same kind of mental thought process is like, do you want the team that beat your team to continue and do well, or are you rooting against that team, right? So when I think about the Edmonton Oilers, I would like to say if I were a Colorado Avalanche fan, I would be rooting for the Oilers because you would want the West team to win, because you wouldn't want there to be any chance that the Eastern team could win and you could possibly have a chance to beat that team, right? You want the team in the West to be the best team in the league so that you know your team wouldn't have beat that team, right? So in my opinion, if Florida goes and beats Edmonton, which they're quite well on their way right here, it's like, oh, well, then maybe the Avs never would have beat Florida, you know? Like maybe they wouldn't have had a chance. But if Edmonton won, you're like, oh, the Avs maybe would have had a chance to go up against Edmonton, but Edmonton's obviously the best team in the league. They wouldn't have beat the Avs, so the Avs wouldn't have had a chance. So it's one of those kinds of things that it's a weird mental thing, and maybe we just do that to make ourselves feel better. It was kind of the same thing, you know, with the Nuggets. It was like Minnesota whooped them, and then they got whooped, you know? So it's like, does that make you feel better or feel worse? But I understand the Canadian teams not wanting to root for Edmonton because I feel like they just have like their own little league up there, right? I mean, that's it's like their own thing. Of course, they're part of the NHL, but they're too close. There's too little of the teams, and they're too close, and it's just not going to work. So I get that sentiment.
Well, and I would add to that the only Canada's quote unquote team is the Raptors and the Blue Jays, because they're literally the only team in Canada for their respective clubs or the organizations for MLB and NBA, right? So I think all of Canada was cheering.
I challenge that. I can't stand the Raptors, and I want the Yankees to win. And when it comes to baseball and when it comes to basketball, I want my Chicago Bulls to win. So
the Bulls, they've had a rough go lately.
Yeah.
So. I'm a Lakers fan by heart, by growing up. Yeah, I know I grew up watching.
You're also in a tough spot right now.
I know. I'm sorry, but I enjoy Luka Doncic and what he's done. But as an aside, you follow the Avalanche. They're out of the playoffs. There's a lot of question marks that they have to focus on. Chris McFarland has a lot of work on his hands. Some of the key things is dealing with Nichushkin, which we've talked about on the show, backup goaltending potentially to help.
Yep.
And what do you guys do with Mikko Rantanen? Because his contract's coming up soon and he can re-sign as of, I believe, this July 1st, if I recall. What is the biggest thing that they have to work on and focus on in the off season?
I think focus on is, I think Mikko is a huge part of this team. I know they're going to want to retain him in any way, shape, or form that they can. I mean, he's right up there with Nathan McKinnon when you talk about the talent that you see in the lineups out there for the Colorado Avalanche. Mikko has always been a guy that you can count on, and I think that the Avalanche need guys like that right now, right? Val Nichushkin was a guy you could count on when he was on the ice, but you couldn't count on him when he's off of the ice, and that's something that that we were talking about earlier when we were not online, is that I think that external factor of what happened with Val during the playoffs when they were playing the Stars really shook up the locker room, and it really affected what happened out on the ice. So you need guys you can rely on both in the locker room out on the ice. And Mikko Rantanen is one of those guys. He's right up there with Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon. I would say that they absolutely need to figure out a way to keep him. Now, backup goaltender, I do think it's important, but I don't think it's as important because Justus Onanen did sign a contract with them and they're extending him. They wanted to keep him, and he was playing really well. He was sick in the first round. We weren't really sure what was going on there. But I did hear he was like sitting away from everybody on the bus. So he did have something that was contagious that wasn't allowing him to play first round. Again, all of us were kind of like, what's going on? It's the first round of the playoffs. Like you need to be out there, right? Regardless of what was happening, especially because Alexander Georgiev was not having the best of games. Everyone on social media was calling for Georgiev to get out of the pipes. And it's like, no, like he was the only guy that they had, right? They called up a few guys from the Colorado Eagles, but Justus Onanen has been playing really well. And he was the first, I think, rookie goaltender to have 2 shutouts in his first 2 weeks or something like that. Now, granted, I think they were both against the Chicago Blackhawks, but, a stat is a stat. And I just think that out of those 3, keeping Mikko Rantanen is most important. The Val thing, I think, is just going to unfold. I don't think that the Avs have much control over that. I think that's all going to be with the NHLPA stuff and what goes on with his contract, obviously, which is still under control of the Colorado Avalanche, but I just don't see any other teams wanting to take that on just after what we've seen in the last year, which is so sad because he's such an incredible talent. And I just wish him the best, honestly, at this point. Like, I just want him to be okay. And I'm sure all of his teammates feel the same way, but that's I think, going to be its own situation.
So you've been around the lot in the psychology of sports. So Pavel and I have had this, we can kind of, Pavel will probably chat in here in a moment. We've had this condition. Now we argue and we do it for fun, of course, as we're bantering through this here. My concern is the time off that he's going to be off, and not because you cannot skate with any professional part of the team. You can do stuff with juniors and stuff like that, so it just keeps you physically active, but there's nothing on a high level competition that he's going to be able to do. He can't play over in Europe, or can't do anything like that during that time. So for me, I can't even see him coming back before Christmas at all. I'm thinking New Year. So what's your thoughts? Because I'm really worried about his game let's just say he's able to put it all together and start working his way back in. And we're always hoping for the best. What's the psychology? Maybe you can explain to people what you see in players trying to come back when they've just gone through a lot of their own just personal turmoil that they've had to fight through.
It's, I think, way harder than any of us can put into words. And this is a situation I've never had firsthand experience with, but I've seen addiction issues from a perspective of someone who really cares about someone and who wants that person to get better and back into their normal routine and their talented, skill, what they're good at. And it takes their own decision and their own accountability to get themselves there. So I just think it's really hard for any of us to assess how this would work, what it might look like, because at the end of the day, it's Val Nichushkin's decision if he wants to get better and if he can, just get right, because it's an illness. So he just needs to get better, and that's just going to be the number one thing. And so I think it's really hard to look at timelines, especially to be like, oh, okay, well, 6 months out of the league for sure. Then he's going to come back. He's going to have to figure out, how to transition himself back into the game. He needs to be so right mentally in order to play well with the team. Because if you go out there and you have any doubts, or you have any, thoughts of like, I let my team down, I let my friends down, my family down, it's such a slippery slope. you know? And so I think it's just really hard to assess what that situation is going to look like right now. And again, like we don't know anything different than the public does, right? Like we weren't told anything on the inside. We didn't even know until it came out on Twitter from the NHLPA that it was happening. We were going live in that moment that the press release was. So we had to talk about it live on air, just reading it on Twitter. So it was a shock to all of us. And I think it still is a lot. And, you know, you don't want to harp on the players and his teammates about it either. It's just one of those things. It's like, we've said kind of, you know, we hope he's good. We hope he can get help. We hope he can get better. And we just hope like he and his family are good. And it's just so hard to assess what the future is going to look like for him.
So then how do you approach stories as a reporter and as a journalist when you're conveying between the game and the analysis of that game, whether it is football or hockey, but also that human element that emerges, because these are real people and with families, with lives, with things going on in the background, for good or for worse. How do you approach your mindset when you're approaching these questions and when you're trying to get something because you're trying to report on it to the fans of that team?
You know, I think you just said it spot on. It's like at the end of the day, these are human beings and they're people. And that's like first and foremost what's important. So when you get news like that, you just go that direction. And our show, Avalanche Live, it is known to be funny. You know, we say crazy things. We have a good time. It's a lot more lighthearted. Like we make jokes, we make fun of each other. And so in that moment, we really had to like kind of zip it together and like get ourselves together. And luckily I'm just the host of it. So I can present it. I can kind of hand it off to our analysis and our reporters who have been so close to the team for like years, decades. Some of them, Kyle Keefe and Mark Rycroft, have been with this team, covering this team for so long. So really they kind of took it away with the news. You know, I was there kind of teeing it up and then they went into it. And you listen to what they have to say about, especially Riker being a former player and understanding that when you have a teammate who's a brother that's going through some hard time, like at first you look at him like a brother and someone that you love. And you're like, oh, this is someone that needs help and needs our support. And just having that conversation live on air in the moment that we were receiving it is really genuine to just share that sentiment that Riker and Kyle both had, you know, that I had, that was like, we hope that everybody on the other side of the TV screen understood that too, that like right now we only care about him as a person. Nothing else matters, you know, in an hour when puck drops, hockey will matter. But right now in this moment when we're receiving the news, we knew it was going to shake up the team, but nothing else mattered in the fact that we just hope that he can get better. So it's just kind of one of those things. You just remember that you peel all the layers back on all of us and we're all just human beings at the end of the day. And no one's perfect. Everyone goes through stuff. And, you know, you just try to be relatable and personable in those moments.
Evan, are you taking notes? This is
yeah, I know, right?
So, again, we have a lot of photos of you doing a lot of reporting. I wanted to ask before Evan gets his next question, is there a moment or an interview that you had that you really enjoyed, or someone that you'd really like to interview, hopefully, be it NHL or maybe otherwise?
Yeah, you know, a lot of the work that I have done has been hosting. So like here I'm hosting the Red Zone features in the press box of the Broncos game. So I'm like up in the fourth floor when the guys are playing the game. So I'm not like around players as often. Kind of same thing right now with Avalanche Live. I'm just hosting that show. So I'm not around the players as much as, say, when I was the University of Arizona's college football team reporter. I was with the players all the time and I was always with the coaches. And so I was interviewing them left and right, you know, up, down, center, like all day, every day. So they've been both very different roles. But when it comes to the Avalanche, I mean, I'm just so fascinated by all of those players and what they do. And I'm fascinated by the reporters and the questions that they come up with. I've spent a lot of time studying the Avs crew that we have at altitude and just seeing how they watch something, you know, that happens in the period and they go into the locker room and they just have this awesome question that flows off the tongue. And I'm like, that is so sweet. And I've been in the locker room several times just with other people that I work with and stuff. And all of the players are just so humble, so great. Cale Makar is like one of the best guys I've witnessed to interview after a loss because he's willing. And that's the hardest part, right? Is interviewing one of these guys after a loss, especially after one that was close or after a game that they should have won. So that is just like a craft that I hope to get better at. But I mean, when it comes to hockey, oh my gosh, I don't know. Rempe would be so fun to interview. I have so many questions about what the heck he's doing out there. How, like, his height, his stature, what's going on, his role as the attacker. I'm just like, I want to know more about him. And so I think that'd be a really fun one. But Yeah, Avalanche. I haven't been super close to a lot. Like, had interviewed them this season because I was just hosting. So I think any of them, honestly, Georgiev, I was so impressed with how he handled everything after the first round. And Jared Bednar was always singing his praises, always saying like he's our guy. You know, he is our number one goaltender. And so I think just like getting to have a conversation with Georgiev and like what was going through his mind, if he would be willing to share, would be really cool.
So let's go back then, just because you're talking about Georgiev. What are the And I know it's hard to take. We run into this with social media because social media is not everyone, right? You know, there's a lot of people that are hockey fans who do not even touch the social media message boards and stuff. You know, it's the message boards of today now. You know, and there's a lot more negative than there is positive anyway. But what's your best read on how the fans of the Avalanche are feeling about Georgiev and his goaltending? Do they feel he is that guy that he can take them through? Are they conflicted? Is it a split? Like, where's the future hold on the goaltending front now for the Avalanche from fans' perspective?
Yes, he definitely had his ups and downs through the season, and you could see on social media, you could hear it in Ball Arena. When he was having his downs, everyone wanted him out. But after the first round against the Winnipeg Jets, after that first game, and then all of the hate that was being thrown around about Georgiev, and then his comeback and his ability to shut out the Winnipeg Jets, who were incredible, you know, who should not have probably played the way that they did against Georgiev in the last few games there. When you went back to Ball Arena, whether it was in the first round or even against Dallas in the second round, everyone was chanting Georgie before the game even started, before puck even dropped. When they were out there for the national anthem, the entire arena was Georgie, Georgie, Georgie. And I think that speaks to Avalanche fans that they're on board with him. And they've finally understood that you're going to have a bad game as a goaltender, maybe several, but it's not always the goaltender's fault, right? There was some stuff going on in front of the net that needed some improvements, needed some adjustments, and Georgiev was just super, super solid throughout. He was able to hone in and focus on what he needed to and not let the background noise shake him up. And I think fans saw that. So I do think that fans are totally fine with Georgiev being the goaltender for the Avs.
Okay, and so now that we're in the Stanley Cup final, and I know you alluded to it a little bit, any thoughts on what you've seen so far throughout the whole playoffs, as well as any thoughts on this final series with Florida being up 2-0 on the Oilers? Can they come back? Like, what is your prediction for potentially game 3 and 4?
What I want to happen is not what I think is going to happen. And I'm sure a lot of people share that sentiment. What I'm seeing out of Florida is that, like, no one can beat this team. They are just different. They've got talent across the board. It's like they know what's going to happen before it even happens. And they're playing just like lights out incredible. And I know they've been a really strong team all season, so that's no surprise there. But I wanted Edmonton to win, number one, because of the whole Western Conference thing, right? Being with the Avs, I don't want an Eastern Conference team to win and us have the thought that maybe the Avs could have beat them. So I do want Edmonton to win, but also because I just feel like Edmonton has nothing else going on up there. Like the Oilers are like all that's going on. I feel like I just feel bad for them. And so I want them to have some like good news. Whereas Florida, I'm like, and does anyone in Sunrise even care about the Panthers? Like, I don't even think that they really care what's going on down there. I just haven't heard of many Florida Panthers fans. They're actually like from Florida and who've been like loyal with the team for so long. Whereas you look at Edmonton and all of those Oilers fans have been fans since birth. You know, you see like baby photos of them in Oilers sweaters. And so I just want it for Edmonton, and Connor McDavid obviously has been playing so well. So I hope they can get it done tonight, at least get one in the series. But I do think Florida will probably.
Can we say that Oilers fans were born inside a hockey helmet, you know, or something?
Honestly, it would not surprise me. At the rink, you know, they went to hockey practice and they're like, just put the wife in the locker room. If she goes into labor, just let me know. I'm going to be out on the ice, you know, just give us a holler.
That's so funny.
Wouldn't surprise me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, people are very passionate. We do have a friend of the show, Jo. She lives down there. She's a season ticket holder for the Florida Panthers. She's taken both her sons to the games, met most of the players. Yeah, great fan there. We chat quite often about it. She's very big on it. Okay, but I think, Edmonton, they really got to dig themselves out of this. But Florida and Bobrovsky, I mean, sir, if he wins this, I think he's a Hall of Famer, guaranteed. Like
he looks lights out. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible the way that he can move his body right now. Again, his vision of like what's going to happen before it happens is insane. And I'm not trying to say that there are no Florida Panthers fans. Obviously, I know that there are. I'm just saying look at Edmonton. If you're going to live in Edmonton, all you got is the Oilers.
We have a football team.
Okay, let's not go there.
I know, I'm getting off topic. So Lost Trucker, who travels around the U.S. Driving trucks, she says you're right, specifically about the Edmonton Oilers and their fandom. And then I think you know Jake Silva.
Jake, yeah.
So he's tuned in, so appreciate that, Jake.
Awesome.
Go ahead, Evan, if you have any questions.
No. I almost thought because I got thrown off there when we were talking. So, one of the things that when I'm looking at the team right now in Florida is now I came into hockey in the late 70s, but what I can tell you is the 79, 80, 81, 80, 81, 82, and 83, 4 straight Stanley Cups. Think of the New York Islanders. That is what the Florida Panthers are looking like. I don't hear anyone making that reference, but they had all those character players, really good, not superstars like a McDavid or a McKinnon, but they had like a Brian Trottier, a Mike Bossy. They had tough guys, Clark Gillies. And so some of you that want to go in history buffs and look around, they have been forming that team in a really good way. And so even if the Oilers lose, there's nothing to hang your head in shame. You made it there and to process. But it's exciting hockey. And if you're not watching it, we encourage you to watch it as we kind of prepare. But my question is, this is my last question for you here, Kim, before we going to have to let you go. But thank you so much for taking the time from Avalanche Live. She follows all things sports, guys, around Colorado. My last question here for you is, what's the one thing or two things that you think that you envision or that you've heard that they're going to focus in on the off season here and getting ready for another year for the Colorado Avalanche?
You know, I haven't heard much, to be honest with you. I've been pretty removed since they got kicked out. I think they're taking some time to figure out what's going on as well. But I do think that the front office is pretty solid. You know, it seems like all of the decisions that they made ahead of the trade deadline, especially adding those 4 new players, which filled holes that they needed to fill, it all worked really well. And so I think that the front office and Chris McFarland, like, they know that they have the right people in the right positions when it comes to the front office. And so I think that, you know, everyone just has such faith in Jared Bednar and what he's doing and what he sees. And with the Gabe Landeskog, that's a whole other situation that I'm sure they want to see him back on the ice. And I think that maybe trying to figure out, in the offseason, if that's realistic or not, will be a huge factor in what they do with the rest of their time and of their money and contracts. And to see that, so he did have a press conference the day after the Avs were eliminated, and he said, I can see myself coming back between September and April. So they're like, okay, well then we'll hopefully see him next season. But he's been skating, and hopefully, everyone's crossing their fingers that we can see him back on the ice. So I think probably figuring out what's going on with him, really getting a realistic idea of where that is will be good. And then just who else they can retain. You mentioned Mikko Rantanen. What are they going to do about Val's contract? And again, I think that's a different situation that will pan itself out. But they've got to figure out some of their contracts and where their money is. But man, they do have a stacked roster, so I hope they can figure out how to keep most of these guys around.
That's been incredible. So I have a final 2-parter question. We love the NHL. We think it's great, but we also know how big the PWHL has been in its first season in its infancy. It's been wild. It's been fun. Record numbers for a lot of things. The draft just happened. My 2 questions are, A, are there any rumblings of Colorado potentially being interested in having a PWA team? And B, are you going to lace up the skates and play what position for them?
Well, number 1, you guys are going to get a kick out of my answer to number 2. But number 1, I have not heard any rumblings about it, but I wouldn't be surprised because we have an NHL team, an NBA team, an MLB team, an NFL team, an MLS team. We have outdoor lacrosse. We have all of these professional teams here in Denver, Colorado. So why not add a PWHL? I think that would be perfect. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I have not heard any specific rumblings. Part 2 to that, I have put hockey skates on once in my life, and I had to take them off 5 minutes later because there's no toe pick. And my balance on skates, I'm used to having a toe pick to help me there. So it totally threw me off. It was so hard. So if I'm lacing up any skates, they will be my own personal figure skates. But I will tell you guys a little side story before I go here. Mark Rycroft and I did a feature. And Mark Rycroft played in the NHL. And so we did a feature together this year in Ball Arena. He padded up. He put John Michael Lyle's old Abs gear on, wore his hockey skates, and I wore my figure skates. And I taught him how to do a scratch spin, and he taught me how to shoot a puck. But I was on figure skates, and he was on hockey skates. It's pretty good. I'll send you guys the link. But it's really funny.
That's cool.
But it was like we both realized, like, our respective sport we're fine at, but when we try to do the other one, even though it's on the same surface, it's not the same.
Was it a slap shot or was it like a wrister or
I
a
did
top
everything. I
shot?
did the slap shot, I did the wrister, I did a backhand, and I was actually
Okay.
pretty decent. He was impressed. Now, I can't say the same for his scratch spin. It wasn't very good. He fell down, but he tried. You know, he got really dizzy, and that's just something that we learn as figure skaters to avoid. So
That's
I
funny.
had more
Mark, if
time.
you're listening, you got some off-season practice to do.
Definitely. A lot.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim, albeit all the technical difficulties. Where can
Okay.
people find you? Where would you like to promote the show? Things like that. Go ahead.
I love it. Thank you. Yes, my Instagram and Twitter are both at Kimberly J. Becker. Avalanche Live is the pregame show that we hosted, or that I hosted this last season. It will most likely come back next season, so looking forward to that. Currently, right now in the summer, I'm the in-game host of the Colorado Rockies. I share that with another, with Brady O'Neill, who's the other host. So we switch off games because there's a lot of baseball games. So I'm kind of in baseball mode right now. And then I do some digital work for Mile High Sports, as you can see at Mile High Sports. And we'll cover training camp. I do a daily, once the seasons start back up, a 60-second video Monday through Friday, just letting you all know what went down in Colorado sports the day before. So that's kind of what I'm going on right now.
And let's just say, and people can call you and send you a tweet if they want help on how to toe pick.
Absolutely. That is my expertise. Now, when it comes to skating on a hockey stick, avoid me at all costs. Don't even reach out. But yes, toe pick, I got you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. We appreciate
Of
it. All the
course.
best.
Cheers.
Thank you. Our guest headliner was brought to you by Penny Billionaires, that great rock duo from Arizona. Go check them out wherever you get your music, Amazon, Spotify, and wherever else. Evan, that was a wonderful interview. Thank you, Kim. Everyone, we apologize for the technical difficulties. It happens, especially at the end of the season. Clearly, we have not fine-tuned or, fine-tuned the kinks as a head coach should. Let's get to some news quickly before we take off tonight. I know you wanted to talk some things. Go ahead.
Okay, why don't we go into Rev's top 15 and we'll cover some stuff for that. Here. The combine just happened as we're going into the draft. And so one of the things that a lot of people want to look at is how many pull-ups can someone do? So that's always funny. Now, you guys may not realize this, but Sam Bennett, he's advertised as a power forward, and everyone's pumped up. You got to be like Sam Bennett. Everybody was laughing at Calgary for taking him. You know why? He couldn't do one pull-up. He couldn't do one pull-up. So the question is, does the combine mean anything for the physical testing? And generally speaking, in the combine, there's not a lot of players that even score in the top 10 of the combine that go in the first round, let alone the top 15. So I thought, why don't we do a quick, interesting look here? So last year, Connor Bedard, he only hit in two areas. One was with pull-ups, and the other was, I believe, in VOT, was it VO2 max or something like that. Yeah. So what I thought, what we need to do is we need to get a better idea of the top performers and the people in the top 15. So this year, so I want you to see this year, who in the top 15 that I've got ranked, or most rankings that you're going to find, have actually been in there. So if we go to the test, essentially duration, we cannot find one single top 15. We go to the VO2 max. That's what I was referring to for Connor Bedard. And Tej Aginla for VOT max, number 2 he hit. That is actually incredible. Macklin Celebrini, he hit 4 really close, right in behind Tej and Simon Zetter. So Macklin, it's the only thing that Macklin Celebrini, I believe, actually hit in the top 10. Otherwise, not another single top 15. When it went to mean power output, I'm not going to break down. You guys can go look up all the numbers and stuff. Not a single person in the top 15. The peak power output that they give, again, nobody in the top 15. We went to the fatigue factor of the fatigue index. Zane Perrick. So Zane Perrick, a lot of people, so there's a lot of people that really like him. Other people that say he's not good. He has great fatigue ability, so he doesn't fatigue out easy. When it comes to the pro agility test, that's like a side shuttle run. You got to go to your left, and then you got to get it to the right. There's a left side and a right side. So when it came to the left side, Constant Hellenius made number 9. And then on the right side, get this, there was not one single person in the top 15. Over to the force plate jump. Over at this stage, again, there's not a single top. There was Levshunov. So Artem Levshunov actually hit this on the vertical jump. So on the vertical jump. Then over in the squat jump, Tisha Ginla hits it again. So you're noticing now this is a couple times Tisha's got in here. So he hits at number 5 on that one. And then we move over to the no arm jump. So that's where they jump and they got to keep their arms. Actually, Tej hits this one again at number 8. So you're going to notice, like, he's a specimen. He's been trained by his dad, the Pro Hockey Hall of Famer, right? Then when it goes to horizontal jumping, we don't have a single person. They have a lot. Bench press. You got to do 50% of your body weight. At this stage, this actually shocked me, Pawel. So Caden Lindstrom hit number 4. So he has a lot of strength, which I was not that familiar with. And Sam Dickinson, a defenseman that could go even to, there's talk he could go to Anaheim at number 3. Then if we move over to the grip test, that's on the grips, actually both left and right. Caden Lindstrom is also very strong on his physical with his hands, on his grip strength. He was on both of them. And then when we move over to the pull-ups, so this is where one top 15 hit number 1 overall, and that was Z Buem. Z Buem actually hit first overall on this one, but Tisha Ginla, again on pull-ups, that guy has definitely upper body. That guy is strong. So he hit on number 7. And then over in the wingspan, there wasn't a single one in there. On the body fat measurements, Sam Dickinson, though, he hit on the second lowest at 3.94. And then we're almost done here on the that was the last one that I actually had registered in there. So, but okay. So now here is the question: does the combine matter? Can this take you backwards? Oh, you're muted, bud. You just got to unmute yourself.
All right. Yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
You make some good points because it does imply some things that you're measuring in terms of where they're at currently, because it is boys going to be first men. Granted, depending on how many pull-ups you can do is not going to matter because you build into your size, you adjust, you get into the rhythm of the NHL and the training, but you start preparing for the change in how you prepare and train for NHL games versus what you're currently doing, whether it is in the AHL, KHL, some of the other junior leagues that you're in, because you're now facing bigger, heftier competition. Okay. And so in that situation, I think it does matter. It also is a good indicator because they have interviews with people. And so the Columbine isn't just a physical. It's also a way for teams to connect with the players and see what kind of person are you? What's your personality? Are you going to be a good fit and represent our organization? You know how we talk, Evan, sometimes this guy is a Boston Bruin. He is such a Boston Bruin. Or this guy, as we talked about, this is a Florida Panther guy. You look at Sam Bennett, because we talked about him a lot. He is a Panther, right? And that is what gets indicated through the Columbine. So I think it does have value. Otherwise, they would have scrapped it. And GMs get time to connect with these players to see, where am I picking you? Maybe they didn't think of picking someone and they say, hey, this kid has some potential here. Why don't I take a chance on him in a 4th or 5th round pick?
Would you say that? Would you say, Pawel, that the actual interviewing is more important from everything that we're learning? I
think it's a bit of both. Both have benefits to it.
Okay, but you did mention, I know you're going to have to go right away, and so we're going to do a wrap. We'll just give one last thought, and then we're going to give a wrap here, guys, tonight. So we're going to just cut out about 10 minutes early. I just want to ask you this question, and let's both give our last thought then. Okay. You do mention that the pull-ups really don't matter, and we just proved that with Sam Bennett.
I didn't say they don't matter. I'm saying they're not as significant as they are later on.
Okay, so significant, but Bennett would be an example. Would you say not? Yeah. Look, he's a power forward. No one would have thought he was. He was too wimpy. In a sense, a lot of people thought. They were worried, and there's a lot of talk about that. However, how much weight do you put in if a guy like Tisha Ginla is really strong? Because if you're not giving a lot of weight to a guy that doesn't do well, or do you give more weight because that's telling you that he's physically ready? Or do you give more weight to things like fatigue factor and VO2 max?
But I think fatigue factor, strength you can always build. It's easy. fatigue factor, especially if you're a defenseman, and I know teaching isn't, but if you're a defenseman, you look at players that can potentially play in 3-4 rounds of the playoffs. Can your defenseman go that far? Can they play 40, 50, potentially even 60 minutes if it gets to that point? I mean, it rarely does, but can a player get up to those 30-minute max and be competitive and not make mistakes? That's how I see it.
Wow. All right. Well, guys, let's go with the last thought of the night. Let me give my last thought, and then Val, give it, and we're going to call her a wrap here today. And this is just more of a thought I want to throw out. So it's actually to the Brooks Bandits, formerly of the AJHL, who got literally evicted out of there because they were moving to the BCHL. They were the champions of the Alberta Cup. That was a one-time only, so they will be in history. And then they did a Rocky Mountain Challenge, best of 3 game series against the Surrey Eagles of the BCHL. Folks, I wonder if the BCHL is saying we shouldn't have brought these Alberta boys in because they took them out 2 straight games. The Brooks Bandits are the champion. The Rocky Mountain Challenge, they're going to be both Alberta Cup, Rocky Mountain Challenge. They dominated both those games against the Surrey Eagles. I don't care how small Brooks is, man. By the way, Cale Makar, Brooks Bandits, guys. Having the Avalanche on. So that is quite, I thought I'm going to dig up a little thing on Cale Makar. And then I said, oh crap, I didn't check out the games. So I'm quite impressed with that. I'm excited about the BCHL, what's going to go on next year. So anyway,
I'm just pumped for the next few games in the Stanley Cup Finals, whichever way they take, because it's been fun, exciting, electric hockey. Viewership is up quite a bit. Good for them. The cap is up. That's exciting. We're going to be talking about that. Patrick Laine wants out of Columbus, another big story we're going to be following. And a big thanks again to Kim Becker for coming on the show and sharing her experiences of sport journalism, Colorado Avalanche, and all things figure skating. As always, in the meantime and in between time,
keep your stick on the ice.
Stay safe. We appreciate it. See you next week.
Cheers. Could that just put him over the edge?
I'm not too sure. I don't think they did well.
He's a bully.
I'm just so sick and tired. I'm hanging on a wire, a foot over the fire, and it's burning. I can feel it inside. Done with the same cliche, done with the day after day. There's got to be a way. Now is the time to break the tide. I'll live, I'll die for what is wrong and what is right. I'll take the pain for all the ones without a name. To be invincible, we'll be invincible.
They still have a lot of holes to fill.
He didn't get fired. He didn't get fired. No, he didn't get fired. He never got his contract renewed.